Chapter 11.
One technique that the toxic magician uses is making something look harder than it is. Universities constantly use this ploy, and the longer people live, the more difficult things will have to be made. So instead of taking 3 years to learn a skill, which should have only taken 1 year, it will now take 5 years. Making things look harder and taking more time allows for better indoctrination and control of the victim who wishes to have a better life for himself or herself by getting the sanction of certain groups. Most people want to be certified by someone greater than themselves. The idea of having a life without some form of certificate will become more and more terrifying as the beast becomes more complex and begins to fall apart. This is when the manipulator begins to shine. He is always best at fall apart. The practitioner knows how to hold out the right carrot and to create just the right amount of difficulty and humiliation to make an ally out of a potential enemy. He knows how to get the victim to identify with his causes and his needs and to make him grateful for all the misery he has been caused. The victim now becomes a true believer as the toxic magician manipulates the parameters of fear, failure, reward, punishment, and success in just the right fashion. He knows that people have no direct access to truth, nor do they have the ability to find out what truth is. Instead, they have religions, superstitions, degrees, certificates, test scores, badges, passports, licenses, and of course, good old-fashioned ancestor worship. These all have in common the worship of authority and power, which the common man attempts to manipulate through gestures, ergo obsessions, hopes, beliefs, and structured living. For example, she gets her college degree, gets married, ergo, which in turn unrolls an entire subset of additional obsessions such as making babies, attending school functions, arranging baptisms, buying houses, and selecting furniture, getting a job, ergo, which provides its own subset of obsessions such as buying a car, being preoccupied with taxes, looking forward to holidays and vacations, attending office parties, working to improve social status, preparing for retirement, ergo, which brings preoccupation with diseases, leisure, and grandchildren, and finally, death. The truly funny thing about all of this is that each and every person thinks that he or she is deciding and controlling these activities intentionally and consciously, and that they are unique in the history of the world. In reality, anyone with an ounce of awareness knows that these activities are common, banal, trite, vacuous, insignificant, boring, and ridiculous, and make for great sport for the manipulator. He will often make believe that he takes these things seriously as he disrupts these unique social patterns. For example, he can have a good laugh over someone's mother having her varicose veins stripped, or John getting caught having an affair, or that Bill has just been diagnosed with manic depressive psychosis. The normal man can be defined by his repetitive routines. He takes vacations every year. Some even take them at the same place every year. He performs certain behaviors and avoids others on certain days of the week. Humans only have a small set of events to look forward to. How many Christmases can you tolerate? If a man sat alone, bought nothing, did nothing, but had the physical strength to act, he would either destroy himself or everything about him. The fact that we measure time linearly while at the same time the days repeat endlessly until we die attests to the reality of the human condition. Even the normal man knows, at some level, that all of this is meaningless and empty. Some even respond to this condition by having a nervous breakdown. The cure, however, is fascinating. Few psychologists or psychiatrists would propose that the patient climb Mount Everest, sail across an ocean, quit his job, divorce his wife, or abandon his children. Instead, almost all of them will provide the drug of the moment and help the poor schnook return to the very routines which drove him mad to begin with. Understanding this is an incredibly powerful opportunity for the advanced toxic magician. Chapter 12. While human life appears intricate and human activity numerous, for the average man, quite the opposite is true. The toxic magician knows how to clarify the habits and willingness of his victim in order to get him or her to respond to his own or her own basic desires. He knows how to raise every need and desire to just the right pitch, making the victim more susceptible, even eager to embrace his will. Each person is simply an instrument that the manipulator plays. In addition, every master knows how to misdirect his activities and use the misdirections of his victim. Every victim has numerous explanations to make beautiful and individual his automated and fearful behaviors. Every victim has platitudes and moralisms to hide his greed, envy, and jealousy. And every victim has a morass of rationalizations and denial mechanisms to mask the numerous sins that keep him or her living in perpetual shame and guilt. Thus, the toxic magician knows that each person is already well controlled, ergo habituated and ritualized, and all that is needed is the right push here or there to create the desired effect. Every human is a heap of convictions, which he or she uses to assure himself or herself that he or she exists as a real individual. In fact, this heap of convictions is the entire content of this bag of flesh called the common man, particularly when it is in the presence of others. He or she babbles on, spouting a fatigued green slime of nonsense syllables which constitute all that he or she thinks and values about what should be and what shouldn't be. The victim's first goal is to impress upon others his or her boundaries of individuality on which, if someone happens to trespass, unpleasant consequences might ensue. This is simply the posturing of the insecure, whose convictions are nothing more than platitudes and divine revelations indoctrinated during childhood. The manipulator has no need to express his convictions unless it serves his purpose to control and create effects. For example, he might express the opinion that he doesn't believe in welfare, while all the time letting others know how much he gives to charity. Doing this allows others to think they have discovered who someone really is, ergo how they really work. Letting others discover who they think you are is much better than telling them. People tend to intensely believe what they find out for themselves, particularly if they think you've been hiding something from them. The toxic magician is well aware how important it is to let others discover things for themselves. He accomplishes this by leaving clues and establishing puzzles and simple contradictions which others can easily solve for themselves. He knows knows that each person is a detective, albeit a bad one, but a detective nonetheless. As people get to know one another, great discoveries by the victim dispel the distrust everyone fundamentally feels toward each other. Subtly or unconsciously, each person knows he or she is playing a role. Thus, discovering the truth for himself or herself helps the person give the manipulator more control than intended. It is important to be aware that secretly everyone wants to be controlled, but in a way which is acceptable to them. Everyone wants to give away what they have, along with all the associated responsibility, as long as it is done in a way which is or which appears respectable to them. After all, they must keep their illusion of pride, which consists of fearfulness and willfulness. These two factors are often combined in ways that make people appear more complex than they really are. People are not complex, and the good toxic magician keeps this in mind, while at the same time giving the opposite impression to everyone he engages. He makes everyone feel unique and complex, and pretends to take their troubles to heart. The more the practitioner hangs out with the common people, the more he understands the cues which they use to make decisions of trust and their willingness to surrender control. Remember, to be in control is frequently painful for most people. This requires that the manipulator hang out with groups from various social strata in order to learn their cues. This may even mean lowering oneself to a level which normally would be unacceptable. In fact, doing this from time to time is good training, and giving charity and alms to those one finds the most disgusting is a very good technique for building the necessary character to deal with more powerful and dangerous encounters which are sure to occur in an active career. Chapter 13. The toxic magician understands how pride works. He knows that if people are forced to lower themselves unwillingly, there will be hell to pay at a later date. Some people thrive on making people lower themselves and giving in. In fact, making people give in is good practice of what not to do. Help people decide for themselves to help themselves by giving in to you. This is the most subtle and powerful form of control. Always first help people to help themselves. If this doesn't work, more aggressive steps are necessary. However, even at the last moment, be mean in a good spirit. Always show a sense of good spirit no matter what you are doing. For practice, it can be useful to push people's convictions to the breaking point. If you attempt this experiment, be sure a good rapport has been developed between you and the victim. Be sure a good flow of energy has been induced, and you have the strength and the vigor to control yourself from making unnecessary emotional outbursts. Remember, your goal is to get the victim to lose control over the irrationality or stupidity of his or her belief. Before performing this activity, however, first take dancing lessons. Dancing through the mind of a person is very similar to dancing with your feet. If you can't take lessons, go to places where people dance and learn to watch them. Also, learn to watch people while they are drunk. In fact, it is a good idea to get drunk, yourself at least, once a month. This will give you the opportunity to see how much you are improving in self-control. When helping people to lose control, learn how to help them save face. Saving face is very important. I suggest learning this habit by almost bringing a person to their knees and then giving them a reprieve. For example, if you gain a minor concession from someone, appear to reconsider what they said for a moment or two, and then tell them that they have a good point. However, remember that you have raised their level of arousal and tension, and this may be an opportune time to get them to give into another issue which has nothing to do do with your present situation. It is extremely important to know how to manipulate another person's tension level, and, as with many things, timing is everything. Learning how to approach people when they are unduly tense or relaxed is an excellent way to get what you want.